Everyone, I'm Mandy Martin, naturalist with our county parks, and I am coming to you today from the Prairie Gardens in front of the Nature Center at Shawnee Prairie. And I want to give you a little bit of background about the gardens. So when we built the Nature Center back in the late 90s, there was a group of volunteers that wanted to establish a prairie around the building. And they planted native plants that were collected from seed along old railroad beds and other locations, and people that gave them native plant seeds. And now you can see how beautiful they are, and I'm going to take you for a walk through the prairie and look at the different flowers that are blooming. But one other thing I want to point out is I like to say there's two seasons of this prairie garden. There's the, oh my gosh, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen season, or there's the why don't you cut those weeds down season. So the people that come to the park, you know, let's say late fall, during winter, early spring, we've had a lot of people that come in and say, why don't you cut all those weeds down that are in front of the center? And I always tell them that they should come back to the park in July, because in July is when the plants are blooming and they're at peak, and it's just a perfect time. So during the filming of this video, it's still July, so I'm going to take you for a walk and take a closer look at the views that I get to see every day when I come to work. I'm going to take you through the Prairie Garden and show you a close-up of some of my favorite flowers, although it's pretty easy for me to say they're all my favorite plants this time of year. But this first one we're looking at is called Mountain Mint, and it is a native prairie plant. It doesn't get quite as aggressive as the herb mint that you could plant in your yard. So it also attracts a lot of pollinators, including wasps. So I've seen the largest variety of wasps that visit this plant called Mountain Mint, and it smells really good. It makes a great tea, and it has these little tiny white flowers, and then the leaves are long and needle-like as well. So it's a beautiful plant for pollinators. We've been pretty lucky this summer with the blooming of the royal catchfly, which to me is one of the most beautiful red flowers that we have in the native garden here around the Nature Center. And it attracts the ruby-throated hummingbird and also is pollinated by our local hummingbird. So it's called catchfly because the calyx is pretty sticky, and it can actually have some small insects that will stick to it, although it's pretty much believed that the plant doesn't get any nutrition from those insects. So we've had quite a showy display of the catchfly this summer, and I wouldn't forgive myself if I didn't show you guys this plant. It's just about done blooming, and here in a few weeks it'll drop its little tiny black seeds. But if you come out here soon, hopefully you'll catch a glimpse of this. And as I was standing here, a hummingbird just zoomed by my head, so wish I could have gotten that on camera. So if your purpose of planting natives is to attract pollinators like bumblebees, then you will not go wrong with the wild Senna. This plant is in the pea or bean family, and once it's pollinated, it gets really pretty long seed pods that will turn dark brown to black in the fall, and then the leaves actually turn bright yellow. So it's a beautiful plant. Usually starting in July it blooms, and then it really is showy all the way through, pretty much through late October. This Senna plant here is already starting to show the seed pods, so hopefully pollination was successful and we'll have some bright brown pods here in just a few months. We're going to take a few moments and focus on plants that are in the genus Silphium, and that includes compass plant, prairie dock, rosinweed, and cup plant. All the plants in this family have really resinous stems, and the pioneers would even use it as chewing gum. And they also have really large leaves that feel like sandpaper. They're really tough, and they keep the moisture in, which is one of the adaptations for surviving in the open prairie that's full sun habitat. This prairie dock right here isn't quite blooming yet, but will be here probably in another week or so. So all these plants have yellow flowers, leaves that orient straight up and down, so it pretty much reduces the impact of the sun on them all day long. And then the compass plant, which is the first one we looked at, has leaves that orient mostly north and south, which is why it's called compass plant. And this one is blooming really nicely right now, so I'm going to show you a nice shot of the blooms, and you'll also get a look at a specialized weevil. So this insect that you see in there is the Silphium weevil, and it will chew into the flowers, the buds, and sometimes it will even cause the buds to fall off or fall over. So it can be kind of destructive, but it doesn't prevent the plant from blooming completely. But it's pretty common to see here. So we've seen prairie dock and compass plant in that genus. This is the next one that's called rosinweed, and it also has the really rough sandpaper type leaves. The leaves on this one are pretty small. One thing that we found here at Shawnee Prairie with the rosinweed is that it tends to be pretty aggressive. So we've had to actually remove it from the garden. So it's definitely not one that we plant in our native plant sale, or that we sell in our native plant sale. The last one in the genus Silphium that I'd like to show you is the cup plant, which I think is about my favorite plant in this genus. And like I said before, prairie plants have a lot of adaptations that help them to survive in the full sun environment. And the best thing about the cup plant is that the leaves encircle the stem, and the stem is perfectly square. And if you look closely, you can see the water in there. So it hasn't rained for a couple days, but the cup plant holds water, which is another adaptation of helping it survive. It hasn't rained for several days, but the amount of water in here is pretty remarkable. So I'm going to go ahead and pour this out, and hopefully you can get a good view of the water that's coming out of there. Really great adaptation by the Silphium genus, especially the cup plant here. Here I found some damage from that Silphium weevil that I was showing you before. This is on the compass plant, and it just pretty much beheads the whole flower. But you can also see that resinous sap that I talked about earlier that this genus is known for. It's quite sticky, and it smells pretty much like turpentine. for a short peek into the flowers that are around the nature center. If you have time, I encourage you to come out now and see them while they're still blooming, and stop in the nature center and maybe I can take you out for a walk.